Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee. How is everybody doing this morning? Or this evening, I mean. Give a few minutes here, let everybody get in here. Hey there, Joe. How you doing? Dana, how are you? First time in my life I'm versed in anything. Freeze-dried ice cream prepper. I've had freeze-dried ice cream. It's not bad. It tastes like the marshmallows out of it tastes like the marshmallows out of Lucky Charms cereal. Hey there, Sunset. How are you doing today? Georgia Garden, hello. Hello from Texas. How's the weather down in Texas? We had a kind of a cold day today. Hey there, Old Spice. Hey there, happy girl. Did a little poking around today. I made a couple of phone calls and I was asking some people kind of what the local economy is looking like. And there ain't a lot of jobs right now. You know, you wouldn't, there's a couple places that always hire. They, of course, you can get a job there, but a lot of places that do like seasonal hiring and stuff, they're either done or they're not going to hire anybody this year. So I am thinking that folks are, I think the businesses are starting to get it in their mind. There's going to be some type of a downturn in the economy coming up here. Prepared for, how you doing? Sunset, oh, the family's doing good. We seen the grandbaby today, helped them do a few things, and then I did my own stuff. Hey there, Rip Curl, how you doing? Texas was in the upper 70s. It was probably in the 50s today here in the middle of the day, but it was chilly this morning, and it's actually chilly out right now. We got a northwest wind blowing. Hey there, Scout. Tyler, following the light. Yeah, the people I talked to today, like I said, I just kind of poke around a little bit, try to get a little. Maybe I should have been an investigative reporter. I don't know, but I uh, I made a couple of phone calls to a couple of bigger companies that you would know, you would recognize if I said what they were, and called and talked to some of the administrative people, and I got pretty much, yeah, we're not interested in hiring people right now. But if you go online and you look at their business online, it shows all kinds of jobs. But when you actually call the place and ask them, then it's a no go. Hey, whatever, prepper. Hey there, Patriot Preacher. Hey, Christine. Claire, I have got to get over to Claire before Christmas at least one time. I need a couple of things from the old Amish hardware store that's over there. I want to take my uh, the gaskets out of a couple of my pressure cookers, and I want to take them over there and see if I can get a new gasket for them. The last time I was in that Amish store in Clare, they had a 4 foot section that was nothing but rubber gaskets for pressure canners. Hey there, Randy. Freeze dried ice cream pepper. Multiple family members have been hired for jobs recently that later kind of got screwed, changed the job description, lower the hourly wage. Yeah. MR, why would they post jobs that don't exist? I don't know why they do that. Like, you can go online and punch in whatever the company is. Like, we got in Saginaw, there's like a Caterpillar. I'm just using this as an example, but there's like a Caterpillar dealership for like heavy equipment and stuff. So if you would put that in, jobs for Caterpillar and Saginaw, whatever you put that, it'll list jobs that are on there, but then there's actually not jobs there. So I don't know if it's like an internet thing, and then it's never like right from Caterpillar. It's like these job search websites like Glassdoor, Indeed. That's kind of how the stuff now. I mean, I was always one. If I wanted a job, I would press the flesh. I would go talk to some people. Hey, you guys got any job openings or what's going on? It was always a face to face thing, and then afterward you go through the formalities and the paperwork, because other than that, you're just wasting time. Another thing that I've heard different people talk about here just recently is just the constant interview process. It used to be you fill in an application, they call you in for an interview, you go in for an interview, you maybe go back for another interview, but then that was basically it. You either had the job at the second interview or not. I think one time I went to a place where yeah, I had like a third interview, but it's a general rule, like two interviews and you were good. And now, I'm hearing people taking like, like they're on their fifth interview and some stuff like that, which to me is just like crazy. It's just like they're wasting everybody's time. Do you want them to do the job or not? And that tells me if they're doing like five interviews before they hire somebody, they really don't need the help, because why are they kind of screwing everybody around with that? But that's kind of how, from my own personal experience here locally, just kind of fishing around, seeing once what the local economy is. And then, of course, it's going in, the harvest is done, they still got to process, there's still sugar that needs to be made and that kind of stuff. But then most of the stuff is pretty well done. There'll be some equipment that needs to be worked on and fixed, but it's looking to be a pretty slow January and February. Oh, yeah, that's a great store, Happy Girl. Yeah, it is. Like I said, my mom, she would always want to go over there. In fact, the one time my mother went over there, and down the road from that store, actually where the store used to be, um, kind of kitty corner there's an Amish family and farm there, but then they have a large building in the back, and they used to do like dinners for like church groups and stuff. And I tagged along the one time with my mother when she went on one of those church groups. It was for like the older members of the congregation, and I wasn't doing anything. It was like in the summertime, and I had the day off or whatever. And Mom asked if I wanted to tag along, so I did. And then some Amish ladies made us a chicken dinner in the back there, and it was sort of austere. It was a large, almost like a little hall. Like where you'd have like a wedding or something like that in, but it was a little bit smaller, and they just had a plain long table that went all the way the whole length of that building. And they had folding chairs and stuff there, and when you came in, you sat down where you wanted to sit, and then they just started bringing food out. And it wasn't like a buffet or anything. They brought the food right to you, so you had like your potatoes and your chicken and your stuffing and your squash and whatever, and it was just there. They brought it out, set the plate in front of me, and that's what you got. I think the only thing you had a choice on is whether you wanted coffee, tea, or water, if I remember right. But that was that place there. And she would go over there a couple times a year. There was a bakery over there. There's a bulk food store over there where they have like 50-pound bags of flour, and they have like the good bread flour, like the Sela, Minnesota flour and stuff. And they have like the bulk spices and whatnot. And then there was a cheese store over there, like a cheese shop, a dairy creamery type thing. But I don't know if that's open, because the last time I was over there, they didn't have much. It kind of looked like the place was closing up. Well, thank you very much, Freeze Dried Ice Cream Prepper. I appreciate that very much, very much. I'm just trying to keep a grounded channel here, grounded in just regular preparedness stuff to help people out. But I very much appreciate that. Thank you so much. MR, what is the industry that foretells shipping? Yeah, what is it? The Baltic Dry Index is what they call, and that is how much I think raw material is being shipped around the globe. And usually, if that tanks, that goes down, then um, at that point, then they figure there's going to be a slowing in the economy, because nobody's ordering and receiving raw materials. But like for us around here, like the Wirt Stone Dock in Saginaw, we drive past that quite a bit, because that's where kind of the main way now that all the bridges over the Saginaw River in Bay City are basically closed. You got to drive into Saginaw to cross the river. Well, that Wirt Stone Dock is where they bring in stone and gravel and that kind of stuff for the raw materials around here. They have just mountains of that stuff. So they got to have more than enough stuff there to last the local area, I would say, the next 6 months, at least until the next spring rolls around and the lake breaks up and they can start shipping again. But that looks pretty well packed. Let's see here. Hey, Michelle Law, how you doing? No need for 5 interviews. I thought it was excessive for 3. Monkey Food Garden. You're absolutely right. Like I said, if it's more than like 2, then you're kind of wondering. But like I said, I'm seeing that more and more now from different people I'm talking to, and it's just kind of like they're just kind of stringing people along for whatever reason. Christine, hello from Connecticut. How you doing? Patrice, Miss Queen Bee, how do y'all do from hot Central Texas? Been running the air conditioning all day. I actually started a sub dog. How's things up there in Canada today? How's the weather up there? Sub Dog is my good friend from Canada. LOL cold, yeah. Yeah, I started we started fire out in the garage today. I was doing some work and stuff out there. I'm be going back to work soon, so I should probably spend a few hours out there getting cleaning things up a little bit. Of course, I had, family member move back home and stuff, so there's a fair amount of stuff out there that needs to be messed around. But as far as the raw material goes, the things that I've seen around here just recently, everybody's kind of stocked. The parts places are all stocked. Everything is kind of stocked up. Now, as a general rule, if you guys don't know about the automotive industry, as a general rule, after Thanksgiving, the automotive industry more or less shuts down. They run a little bit, but then they have an actual, like, all the big three, whatever you want to call them nowadays. Do they still call them the big three anymore? I don't know, since everything's been bought out, filed bankruptcy or whatever. But as a general rule, the car companies shut down like around Christmas, and that's like just like the kids, they have like a 2 week Christmas break, and that's kind of what that is. And you don't have the everything's kind of online now for the sales. Even like the big box stores, they have stuff, but a lot of that stuff is all online, whatever, and they spread that out over the next over several days. It's not just like the Friday after Thanksgiving anymore. Hey there, Jen Meg, how you doing? So there's but yeah, as a general rule, I'm kind of seeing the slowing of the economy. There's been multiple food distributions around here since the first of the month. They I don't remember the name of I don't remember the name of the organization that does it, but they go around from small town to small town, and about every, I'd say, 2 to 3 weeks, they get back to your town. So, like our town here, like once a month or maybe twice a month max, they'll have a food distribution here, and then all the seniors and stuff they go up there. And it used to be people would go there and they would say, hey, I'm getting stuff for me and my neighbor, or my elderly grandmother or whatever, and then they would give you like a double portion or whatever. But now I've been seeing, they must have had a lot of people kind of doing that to get extra or whatever, because now I've been seeing where it's just they just give it one vehicle just gets one family's worth of food or whatever in these food distributions. And that tells me that there's a lot more people asking for stuff than what they got food for. So even those food distributions for the free food has been rationing it. And then, of course, like on Facebook and stuff, post they post pictures of where they're distributing this stuff, and you can see sort of there's bags of vegetables, and there's like 10-pound bags of potatoes, there's big bags of onions. The one I seen, they had like in Walmart bags or whatever, they had a bunch of red and green peppers in there. And then that gets to some of the older people and stuff around here that I know that they go to those food distributions and stuff, like they get stuff they don't even know what to do with. Like I remember this was this summer. I had some elderly people I know. They gave them like a dozen cans of garbanzo beans, and these are older German people. They've never made a garbanzo bean in their life, and they're like, we don't even know what to do with this stuff. So I kind of gave them some cooking pointers, I guess. Like garbanzo beans, you can actually put those in like a tomato sauce. You can put some fresh garlic in with it. Basically, you can add them to a marinara sauce and then have them with some pasta or something like that. And it's almost kind of like a meat substitute. And if you simmer those garbanzo beans in that pasta sauce, they kind of absorb the flavor of the garlic and the pasta and stuff, or the garlic and the tomato and stuff. And it makes it's basically kind of like something that you would add to a spaghetti. So I was telling him, hey, that's one of the ways that you can do that. And I said, you can mash them up and you can add a little bit of like garlic and pepper and stuff into that stuff. And then you can have it kind of like a bean dip. That's another way, because that's what tahini is, if you've ever heard of Mediterranean tahini. But the only thing in tahini they put in, what do they call that? Tahini is like, it's losing my mind here now. Sesame seeds, like ground up sesame seeds. It's basically a paste made out of sesame seeds. They add that into the crushed garbanzo beans, and then that makes your hummus, whatever. And then the tahini. That's how you make hummus, and then you have that, and it basically takes on the taste of the sesame seeds. Then, but tahini is something you just can't find around here. Oh, 15-minute prepper. I appreciate you, buddy. How are things going up there? I've been catching lives and on the replay. See, I got a grand. I will definitely do that. They are coming over here this weekend because my daughter is requesting biscuits and gravy and dad's sausage. And nobody makes it like dad. So I am making that for her. But I appreciate that. I will make sure that she gets that 15-minute prepper. Definite. 15-minute city prepper. He was protesting out in front of Colt and CZ because they are actually destroying citizens' firearms up there in Canada. Whatever they're confiscating, Colt and CZ, that's not the old Colt from back in the day. Colt, it was bought by CZ, which is actually a European conglomerate, and they are basically curtailing people's right to own a firearm up there, and it is terrible. Tom M, how you doing? Have you heard anything about that sub dog where they're basically grinding up people's firearms up there at 15-minute city prepper there? He was out there like protesting in front of um, their their business, whatever they call that. MR want to look for as concerned the Baltic Dry Index. Well, if the Baltic Dry Index drops, that means there's less raw materials being shipped around globally. And if you're not producing anything, you don't need raw material. And if you're not producing anything, then the economy kind of contracts. That's how I was always um, it was explained to me. Subdog, yes, they're trying to take them, but a lot of our people are not complying. Good. I wouldn't comply either. Here I am. I'm out myself on the World Wide Web here. Yeah, there's in my community and in rural Michigan. Yeah, good luck with that confiscation thing because it's not going to happen. I'm going to tell them that right now. I know the people around here have lived around here my entire life. There, if they would have my guess would probably be less than a 1% compliance rate. And I've heard that directly from LEOs, local LEOs. The local town police and the county sheriffs and that kind of stuff around here. There ain't going to be no compliance for anything like that. The only way that they're ever going to do anything like that is if they would grandfather everything in, because they're never going to just flat out do it. That would just never happen. But anyway, that's enough of that subject. So MR, what is it now? Sorry if I missed it. I don't know. Let me check. Let me see if I could get the Baltic Dry Index to even come up. I haven't checked that in a while here. Let's see. Baltic Dry Index chart. I'll read you. This is what came up here. The Baltic Exchange Dry Bulk Index, which tracks rates for vessels transporting dry commodities, was up for a third session on Monday, raising 1% to its highest level since September 29th, mainly driven by larger vessel segments. The CAP index, which typically transports 150,000 ton cargoes such as iron ore, coal, advanced for a third of the day, recording its eighth consecutive gain. On the other hand, the Paramax, which usually carries 60,000 to 70,000 tons of coal and grain, is decreased. So by half a percentage point to 1887. So grain and coal isn't being moved around, but iron ore, according to this, is. And then they give you probably going to show on there now, but they give you like the chart, and the chart's kind of going in the upward swing right now. But when that drops, that Baltic Dry Index, when that drops, then there's just like back in 2020 when everything locked up and seized up, that Baltic Dry Index fell right off a cliff. That was, and that's because they weren't shipping anything, they weren't sending anything anywhere because nobody needed, you don't need iron ore if you're not making steel. So that's just kind of how that goes. Uh, Karen Riggin, yep, I 100%. I know that it ain't gonna happen. And then especially where you're at, Karen, yet that's even more so yet than rural Michigan. Henry Morgan, America is the last country with legal armed citizens, and that's true. And they're doing everything they can to take that stuff away. Uh, Monkey, it's starting to push for a vote, maybe a vote next year. Looks like three parts of Ontario as well. Yeah, Ontario, you have your big cities because Ontario is my neighbor. You have all your big cities there in southern Ontario, but you get up in northern Ontario. Northern Ontario is wild wilderness. My father-in-law, they used to go up to a place called Iron Bridge, Wawa. Wawa is a big one around here because you look on a map where Wawa is. Wawa is, I don't know, that's like a 6 hour drive from Sault Ste. Marie. And Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and Sault Ste. Marie, Canada, Ontario. Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan is only like an eighth of a size of what Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario is. And Sault Ste. Marie is actually one of the oldest cities in North America. It's been there. There's been a settlement there for a long time. But then when people want to go on fishing trips and spring bear trips and that kind of stuff, they all drive north out of Sault Ste. Marie up to Wawa. And then Wawa is a springboard where they go out into the bush where they go for, you know, fishing trips on pristine lakes, and they drop them off at bear camps and stuff like that. And my when my wife was a teenager, they used to go up there to Wawa, and then they would go up to Iron Bridge and stuff, and they would fish. And there was one time they got kind of stranded, and they were kind of subsistent there for 4 or 5 days. They kind of ran low on their supplies, and all they had was fish. So they ate fish like every day for a week. I remember that story. That sounded like quite. And if I remember right, there was heavy rain, and they couldn't get back out to where they were at because everything was flooded. So they basically fished for their dinner every day. Oh. Mistress Queen Bee, I wish you a longer life than you would have if you come for my stuff. Well, you know what? Texans got the reputation for it, but I'll tell you what, I think rural people everywhere have that same opinion. We're all in solidarity with that. Old Hands Wilderness. Good evening, all. Hope everyone's doing well. I hope you're doing well too, sir. Henry Morgan. I'd say that there's especially since like 2008, there is just millions and millions of them out there. I don't even know how they would even. There's yeah, there's I wouldn't even. I know just from what I sold over the 20 years that I sold, I would sell when I started selling guns in 1992, I would sell maybe two a week, maybe three, something like that. And then toward hunting season, you'd sell maybe a few more. You'd maybe sell one every day or something like that. But toward the end, if I got something in that was in demand and people wanted, I'd sell 6 guns a day. It was just how it was. And that just kept increasing, increasing, increasing until they pulled the plug basically on everything in 2018. Uh, Old Hands Wilderness. I'm in Northern Ontario. Wawa's about 3 hours from the Sioux. Yeah, Wawa was like always the springboard. So if you had a fishing trip planned or a float plane trip where they take you and drop you off in some cabin to go pike fishing or whatever, Wawa is where everybody kind of like met. And I've never been up to Wawa. I've been to the Sioux, but that was it. Kevin Dillon, guy from the gun club, told me Tuscola County is a Second Amendment sanctuary. Oh, I'm sure of it. Yeah, you know, the thumb of Michigan. That's where the whole Michigan militia. That's where that all started. Was in Michigan's thumb, right where we're at here. So it's and a lot of it started out as a lot of hunters, but now it's kind of shifted more from people hunting to people just basically exercising their Second Amendment rights. I'm doing my best to stir things up and let the large company involved and the RCMP know that I'm off the couch, not sitting down for it anymore. Like I said, I don't know why they would, as wild as Canada is, as wild a wilderness as Canada is, why they wouldn't want their people up there to be armed just blows my mind. You get up north of the big cities there in southern Ontario, you're in God's country up there. That's you know we got the Upper Peninsula here in Michigan, but northern Ontario is like the Upper Peninsula times 10, and the Upper Peninsula is pretty freaking isolated and pristine yet, and it's nothing compared to northern Ontario. Subdog, I'm an hour from Sudbury. I'd like to take the drive around Lake Superior once. I've driven all the way along Lake Superior in Michigan and Wisconsin, but I would like to take that trip all the way around and then maybe go to the Bruce Peninsula there and hike the Bruce Peninsula if I ever get my legs figured out here. We have the Adirondack. I hear the Adirondacks are beautiful. I hear the Adirondacks are beautiful. That's beautiful country up there. And then of course the division, there's New York City and then the rest of New York State. And that's a lot like what Michigan is. Michigan has its cities, pretty much I-69 divides the lower peninsula. In fact, it's probably like the 1/3 of the southern part of the lower peninsula. I-69 kind of divides that. So that 1/3 of Michigan, that's where all the people in the cities are. And from I-69 north, yeah, we do have a couple, larger cities like Bay City and Saginaw, but then that's basically it. And then, you have the Sioux and you have Marquette up in the UP. And then in the northern lower, you got Alpena on one side and you got Traverse City there. And then north of Traverse City, that's where all the rich people are. That's where your Petoskey, Harbor Springs, Charlevoix. Charlevoix is really, that's like the Beverly Hills of Michigan up there. And, so we got some little bit larger towns, but a majority of the population and industry and everything in Michigan is from I-69 south. And then everything north of that, a lot of it is agriculture. And then there's a lot of timber and stuff up in the UP and whatever. And then you have all the businesses that support those manufacturing operations and stuff. New York State is 75% red, and red and blue, and you get into I remember where we're at here, the Democrats they were staunchly Second Amendment supporters. There, you go back in time. I'm going to throw out some names you guys probably never heard of, but unless you've been, you're my age, you lived in Michigan now. There was a state representative, Bob Traxler was one, and then the other one was Jim Barsha. And Barsha is still in politics in the Bay City area, but he's already spent all his term limits in, and I don't know if Barsha is still a Democrat. I don't know if he is or if he's independent now or what it is, but those guys were always Democrats, and they were always, helping out the small farms and, Second Amendment rights. And they were always at all the Michigan Conservation Club meetings. And, if you had any problems with, your VA benefits or anything like that, boy, those guys were right on top of that. You'd call their office and they were helping the common people out now. And I'd say about the early 2000s is when all that changed, and we have all this partisan divide now, so it's really weird how that's all been, corrupted and twisted and turned around. People that used to be, for country people and for Second Amendment, and then they were Democrats. Now that's all flipped around, that they're against that, and they want all this and that. It's just strange how that's always how that's turned around just in the last couple of decades. Hey, JD Prepping, how you doing? Sons, I live in mid New York. Everyone knows I hate New York City. I I've had a couple of people, they've asked us to go to like New York City. Like we had some friends, I don't know, maybe about 5 years ago. They wanted to go for a couple of days and go to see Rockefeller Center where the Christmas tree was. And me and my wife were just kind of like, yeah, thanks, but I don't think we want to even go out there. And that's kind of how I am with any cities. Sometimes you have to go to the city, like for medical, like what Sunset said, if you got to have surgery or something, you got to go to those places, but it's not, you know, you don't really want to go there anymore just because how things are deteriorating. I mean, I look at like Bay City is the perfect example. Bay City used to be a really decent, kind of medium-sized city around here, and now it's like deteriorating, and they're not spending no money on nothing, and they sold the bridges to private interests over the river, which is like the backbone of the economy, and it's just everything's kind of going to shit in a handbasket. And I don't see that turning around. And now they're talking, what did they say up in northern Michigan? They want to put, Oracle wants to put some, they want to level a bunch of state land, and they want to, and when I say state land here in Michigan, state land is wilderness. Basically, they want to level a bunch of that to put in like a data center, like a massive data center. They said 250 acres. Well, then was it last year they wanted to level a bunch of um, woods so they could put up uh, a solar farm. Well, first of all, it's northern Michigan, so you're north of the 45th parallel, which means you're not going to get that much sun this time of year, especially, starting in September, your days are getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter until, things start turning around in March. So, how much solar power are you going to be getting north of the 45th parallel in 6 months of the year? So, and people were pissed. They're like, well, you want to level a bunch of freaking forest to put in a solar farm? I can see solar like, where the sun shines a lot, like in the desert or something. But you don't think of northern Michigan as a place where you get a lot of sun, So and especially 6 months of the year. So it's just, I don't get it. Uh, I am not comfortable around crowds. I'm not anymore either. I used to be. I used to like, go to the county fairs and, you'd go to the city when they'd have some kind of festival or something like that. But anymore, I just as soon stay home, stay in my hometown. Sunset, New York City is way too dangerous and gross. That's what I hear about New York City. It's very dirty. It's very dirty. Whatever prepper, I have solar and it sucks in the winter. Well, that's what I've always wondered. You'll see people like up in Alaska and they're saying, "Oh, I got my solar generator." I'm like, "Well, how much isn't it like, and what used to be Barrow, Alaska there, they changed the name on it now. I can't remember what they call it now, but they changed it back to a native name. But like in the next day or so here, the sun's going to set and it's not going to come back up for like 2 months. So how much, you get up there in Alaska, how much solar electricity can you make up there? And that's what I've always wondered around here. Solar might be okay for us here, like maybe from the end of April through like Labor Day, but then after that, the days get shorter and shorter. And especially in November and in December, then during the daylight hours, it's cloudy, you're completely overcast for maybe 12 days at a time. So then how much solar energy are you getting there? I can see maybe the wind power, but I can't see the solar. I just can't. Monkey Food Garden, everyone who comes to visit, all they want to do is go to New Orleans few times a year. Yeah, I got a friend that tells me I got to go down to New Orleans during Mardi Gras, but I'm like, I don't think so. And she always talked about that, like after Mardi Gras, everybody goes to church. There's a like a big, I want to say it's a really big Catholic cathedral, and like after Mardi Gras is over with, what it gets over like at midnight or something, and then everybody is all still half in the bag, and then they go to church afterward. To me, that just kind of seems all like backwards and weird. Why do you want to go to church after you've been, drinking and partying all night long? You go, I guess, yeah, but I guess that's what they do. And so, anyway, uh I stay home on my homestead as much as possible. I wish I could. I wish I had enough money in the bank where I would only have to, maybe go out twice a week. But other than that, just leave it at that. But I'm getting longer and longer. I'm getting bound here to the small town. I'm getting more and more like that, and a lot of people that I work at a local business now, and 75% of our customers, they come into our place because they don't want to have nothing to do with either the city or big box stores or anything. They just come to our little establishment, and that's why we have such a good business, because people just they don't want to patronize those big box stores, and they don't want to drive to the city. They want to keep it local, so we still have a local community here. So there's still money in the local community, and that's why we kind of go above and beyond with customer service and stuff, because we are serving our community. It actually means something for our business. It actually means something that we are serving our community. When like people come in like from different organizations and stuff, and they're having this and that, we'll flat out ask them, hey, we want a shot at your business. So if you need a bunch of material, or there's things that you need to come to us and see if we can't work out a price for you first before you go to the Sam's Clubs or the Costco's, to that kind of thing. You come to see us first, see if we can't work something out to keep that business and keep that money here in our community. And that's, people talk about, SHTF, you got to have community. That's community right there. And that's kind of the small town thing. And certain people, they do support that. They go out of their way to support that. And that's when people talk about being in small communities and being in have a community when SHTF happens. That's kind of what you're looking for. Kevin Dillon, my happy place is anywhere north of West Branch. Oh yeah. Yep, that's West Branch. You're starting to get up there. You're getting in a few hills there. A lot of people go riding up there by West Branch. Hey, Lady Luger. Monkey Food Garden. No, Mardi Gras is when the locals leave, and that is true about the church. Yeah, that's like I said, the people that I talked, they said, oh, yeah, when churches or when, all the crazy party thing is over with, everybody like goes to church. I'm like, it's just, anyway, is what it is. Wash away the sins. Yeah, I'm sure. I probably need a lot of water from what I've heard anyway. New York votes, I think, for governor. Yeah, I can. Well, at New York, they like isn't like almost every governor, like every governor that I can remember in my lifetime. That's all. Pretty much all the governors got hung with some type of illegal thing or corruption or whatever. It's I don't know. I don't think there's any morality in politics anymore. I really don't. Spend all our time on the homestead or vacation is just getting projects done. Just took a few days off to put up a second greenhouse. Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to have to figure out where to put up my arrow gardens here in the house. I was thinking about doing an outside, do like a little cold frame outside, do some lettuce or something in that here, so we have a little lettuce for December. But I'm still on the fence whether or not I'm kind of concerned that we might get a lot of snow this year. A lot of the signs are showing snow, and well, then the snow covers up the cold frames and they don't get the light and stuff. You got to go out there and you got to brush everything off. So I'm still kind of debating whether or not that I want to do that. My brother lives in LA. He's crazy. There was a time I wanted to go to California and see California about 20 some years ago, because I have relatives out west, but they don't live in California. And I wanted to go kind of maybe see the Pacific Ocean or something. But now, like my relatives out there, they said, yeah, you don't want to go to California. We're as far west as you want to go. Anything further west than that, they said the whole west coast there from California all the way up to Washington and Seattle. They said that's all. And then I know a couple of people from online that live like in Eastern Washington and Eastern Oregon, and they said that's like a completely different state from one side of the state to the other of how people are. And I would believe that. If you all come to Louisiana for Mardi Gras, go to Mamu, look it up online. County Mardi Gras is a hoot. Country Mardi Gras is a hoot. I'd come down there and I'd want some of the food. I want some jambalaya, and then what's the other one? Brunswick stew, and what do they call the one where they put burgoo? that's something that's I know people that have relations in Kentucky, and that's always something that they always get at the local restaurants is burgoo. It's like a stew where they put in all the wild meat and stuff. Oh yeah, and the hot sauce. I don't know. I make a pretty good hot sauce. I just took my hot sauce jars out of here, put them over in the oh yeah gumbo. I don't know. I've made gumbo already. It takes you got to get that flour just to the right color when you're making your roux. And but I'm sure it's probably not near as good as what you'd get down there. I'm still working on my biscuits though for a Yankee anyway. But my daughter, she wants me to make biscuits this weekend, so I will be making biscuits and my own homemade sausage. Oh, there's a Republican debate in Traverse City on Thursday night. I bet you that's going to be crazy. That that filmmaker, he's got that the one that did the Roger and Me and the Fahrenheit 911, the big fat guy. He's got a he's got that that not hotel that there's like a movie theater or something in downtown Traverse City. He used to have that, and they would always have rallies and stuff there. I can't remember what the hell the name of the guy is there. Like I said, he had that Roger and Me video back like in the late '80s, early '90s. Oh, Michael Moore. Yep, there you go, Kevin Dillon. That's the guy. My brother makes all that. Come on down, Karen. I might take you up on that. Tell him that a Yankee wants to try his burgoo. He wants to give that a whirl. Sub dog, deer seasonal rifle just ended here. Next is muzzleloader. Do you use a muzzle? Yes, I do use a muzzleloader, and I would love to show it to you, but YouTube would slap me down on this. But I have two muzzleloaders. I have an actual traditional Thompson Renegade with a set trigger, 50 caliber, and then I have a modern inline muzzleloader, and that's actually antiquated now. Nobody really uses them anymore, but I've just grown accustomed just using that for deer hunting, so that's what I use. I did deer hunt one day, but I didn't get anything. The guy that hunts with me, his boy shot an 8 point off kind of on our line fence, and then a bunch of yahoos across the road did a bunch of shooting after dark. I'm pretty sure it was after shooting hours too. And when I got out there, they had a pickup truck with their headlights shining, shining out in the field, and they were gutting something. So I I didn't say anything, but I'm pretty sure that that was after shooting hours. But what the heck do I know? If you mean gumbo, if you ever make it down here, shrimp boil. That sounds. My wife would like that shrimp and crawfish boil. I've done fish boils up here already, but that's the different thing up here. A fish boil in the north is different from what they have down there on the Gulf completely. But actually, a fish boil with fresh whitefish is actually pretty good. I have a 41-inch barreled Kentucky percussion cap Flint Hawken. Yeah, a Renegade. If you don't know Subdog, a Renegade looks like a Hawkins, but it's typically a little bit shorter and it doesn't have the patch box in the stock. And that's what a Renegade is. And I actually, when I was about 19 years old, 20 years old, I bought that in a kit. Thompson Center had kits back then, and they had a piece of a walnut in there that was kind of rough cut out, and you had to sand that down and you had to rasp that and get all your curves in there and stuff. And then it had the lock and it had the barrel, and um, you had to put all the holders on for the ramrod underneath it and stuff. And it's got a double set trigger. So you got your rear trigger, you set it, and then your front trigger is kind of a hair trigger then. And that I've only shot one deer with it. I shot a doe with it maybe about 10 years after I had it during the actual muzzle loading season. I had a doe permit that year, and but God, that was years and years ago. But that's what a Renegade is. But Thompson Center, that's not the same. All the firearms I have are all older, and that's back when those companies were actually still those companies. Now, when you're buying a firearm that has a particular name on it, that could be 5 times changed hands since the last time you bought a firearm with that name. So but yeah, that and the thing with a muzzle loader is you can kind of mess around with the loads and stuff. You can get a lot of utility out of a muzzle loader if you know what you're doing. If you have that, you kind of have that mindset, and it doesn't take a lot of extra gear to do that. And I actually got show you this from back here. You can kind of see it now that I move my fat butt out of the way. That's my tomahawk. I had an old guy that he made me this handle before he passed away. Gave me some pointers on how to make a handle, and he said that needs a curved handle on it. So then he made that curved handle for me on that tomahawk. But then uh, there used to be a muzzle loading shop around here. I, my man cave here is kind of like a museum. It's got a little bit of everything in it. Since I can't show anything Second Amendment related, I could show you accessories. There used to be a black powder shop around here. It was called Ye Old Black Powder Shop, and I actually bought the components for this guy, and I made my powder horn. You can't be a real muzzleloader unless you have a powder horn. So I made a powder horn to go along with my tomahawk, and then before my mom passed away, she had her one sewing machine that she could make. She could sew thin leather with it. So this was some old leather that I dug up out of my grandparents' stuff, and mom sewed me a possibles bag, put a couple of snaps on it. So then I would carry my gear in this when I would use my Renegade. It probably took me too long to whip that off the wall here, but my little man cave is like a little bit of a museum with all the stuff that I've got in here. But yeah, that Ye Old Black Powder Shop, it was in a town called Auburn, Michigan. That was over by Midland, and that it had everything in it. You could go in there and you could buy all the components to make whatever kind of muzzleloader you wanted. If you wanted to reenact the Civil War, you wanted one of those 1861 or whatever Springfields, you could build that. If you wanted a Pennsylvania rifle, you could buy that. They had all that stuff in there, and that closed up when I was about 21, 22 years old. But I remember every time we would drive through there, I'd be like 16 years old. I'd be like, say my mom, hey, stop here, I want to go in there. So that was pretty cool. But you could get stuff like that. Like you could buy all the components to make yourself a powder horn. You could buy the little brass brads, and you could buy the leather and strips. You could buy sinew. Yeah, it was back in the old day. Thanks, sub. I appreciate that. But yeah, I like those old. I've shot a couple of those Kentucky long rifles. They're pretty darn cool, man. You got that real long sight plane down there. You can pick if you know your elevation on that, boy, you can shoot them pretty cool. Yeah, Auburn is between Bay City and Midland. Yeah, and I don't even know if the building is still there anymore. What had that Ye Old Black Powder Shop in, but yeah, those were the good old days. Oh yeah, and that's why I did it. I wanted to be able to say, hey, I put this muzzle loader together, and I've switched to the sabots and the the maxi balls and stuff now for actually hunting and stuff. If I would take that out, I would use a maxi ball or something like that. But you know what? There's something about the patch and ball when you load those patches and balls, because a patch and ball is actually really, really accurate if you know what you're doing. And the same thing with your powders and stuff. All them new powders, I still prefer GoX. Even in my modern muzzleloader, I put GoX in that because I actually there's an old guy that I knew, and it was an old farmer. He's passed away now, but he had a chronograph because he did a lot of reloading, and the most accurate powder out of all those, they had the Pyrex pellets, and they had the Pyrex powder, and the All American powder was another one. These were all like synthetic black powders basically. I got the most consistent velocities out of GoX straight black powder. I got the most consistent velocities out of that compared to, all the synthetic stuff. So but it's dirtier. You gotta pay attention. You gotta clean your stuff. But there's something about that smell of that black powder when she goes off. Boy, that's something. Monkey Food Garden. I need to do a man cave tour. Problem is about like everything that you guys don't see in here, I can't show any of that on YouTube. They would be very upset with me and they would boot me off, and then I wouldn't be able to do lives with you guys anymore. Yeah, I wanted to get. I was thinking about getting something where I could pour my own 50 caliber muzzle loading balls, but I've never gotten around to that. And a lot of the old guys around here, when they would do that, they would actually melt wheel weights. And there was something like a wheel weight is an alloy. There's something that they mix in with the wheel weights that makes those balls harder. And because they're a little bit harder, they don't deform as much like when they're going out the barrel. And they would always claim that those were more accurate than just straight up lead when they would pour them. But because I never had any experience with any of that, I don't know. I was L Dog. I was always wondering why you have cedar leaves hanging. Cedar is a powerful medicine. And I had somebody actually allow me to go cut some cedar, and that's the cedar that hangs out there in the shed. Cedar is in Anishinaabe traditions. Cedar is a very powerful medicine. If you look up, I'm sure that you could find stuff online what they call a cedar bath. And a cedar bath is something that they would use if somebody was very, very ill. Karen, if you're still on here, you can jump in here and fill in anything that I'm missing on that. But cedar was considered a extremely powerful medicine, and they would do cedar baths for people that were very sick, and that was sort of one of their natural remedies. But cedar is very particular on how it's used. It's considered a female medicine, which means for it to be the most potent in Anishinaabe tradition, it would have to be harvested and then administered by a female. So that was some of the thing, and I was given or allowed to harvest some of that cedar. That's why that hangs out there in my shed. And then cedar, of course, is one of the four plants that's associated with the native medicine wheel, and so that's the kind of the kick on that there. Uh, Doe, I have a modern Thompson Center Triumph, but a local lady lost her husband, and he had two old school cap and ball pistols. Now she tells me there's no ammo for it. Well, I'm sure that you could make ammo for it. I got a couple black powder pistols too, but the one actually seized up. It was a revolver, and I used it actually quite a bit. I actually carried it a couple of years during muzzleloading as a little backup pistol, but I had it wasn't very good quality. I cleaned it and took care of it. It still would always want to seize up on me, but I think if I would really want to get a black powder pistol to use it for serious hunting or anything, I'd get a single shot like the Revolutionary War type. I think those are probably your best bet for that stuff. Freeze dried ice cream prepper cedar. Really, that's crazy. Yeah, cedar is considered the most. I'm not 100%, and if Karen was still on here, she could tell you, but I think it is considered the most powerful of the native medicines is cedar. And then each plant on the medicine wheel has a very specific thing. Hey, Washburn, how you doing, buddy? Never knew. Oh wow, never knew that. Yeah, but cedar is, hey there, Teresa. But yeah, cedar is considered very powerful native medicine. Black powder pistols are not legal for deer in Ohio. Well, that sucks. I guess I better not go down there and shoot a deer then with a black powder pistol. I've never shot a deer with a pistol anyway. I've often, thought I was going to try it, but then I never. And then on the flip side, I know people that's all they hunt with is a large caliber handgun. So and they get multiple deer every year. It just all depends. I like pistols and stuff, but I've always used a long gun or a muzzle loader or a bow to take a deer and a bear. I've thought about Karen, yeah, used in lodges. Yeah, they um, and cedar. That's not just medicinal. It's also ceremonial. Yeah, it's like there's a lot of nuances to native medicine. Of course, I only know, what I've been taught, but there's a lot of nuances to it, and there's certain ways that stuff when you use certain things, there's certain ways, and your intent is always really big in native medicine. Your intent means a lot when you're administering those things. So, but yeah, that's all that. But yeah, I wish they still. I think tradition still probably puts out muzzle loading kits and stuff like that. They're kind of fun to put together. You learn a lot about the mechanisms and that kind of stuff. And you know, if it gets right down to it, a little bit of black powder and a little of that muzzle loading stuff, you can actually adapt some of that. Like you can load shotgun shells with a punch and a couple of washers and basically a powder measure, and they call it a square load. So if you put in like a flat grain amount of powder and then a flat grain amount of shot, you can actually reload a modern shotgun shell with black powder, and then go ahead and you can use that in a like a modern 12 gauge or whatever. And if it really got down to it where you had to scavenge all that stuff, you could make shot. And that's why I always say, like, if you only got one firearm, you should probably have a 12 gauge shotgun, because it's probably the most versatile. And even if no more ammunition was around anywhere, I still have probably enough powder here and enough primers, and I have enough, boxes of BBs and stuff around here. I could throw together a couple of shotgun shells if I would want to, like, harvest a goose or something like that, or a turkey. I could probably whip up a couple of shotgun shells for that. I wouldn't be, I couldn't make thousands and thousands of rounds of it, but I could do enough with what I had here. And that's too, like, if SHTF does happen and you are kind of getting down there in ammunition, any shotgun shell holes, any of the plastic holes, that you should pick all those up and save them, because that's what you would use to reload those black powder shotgun shells. And because black powder is not quite as doesn't have as high a pressure, and it doesn't have the same kind of volume to expansion. I don't know what all the scientific terms are, but it doesn't. It's safer to reload them than it is with the modern powder. The modern powder, you have to get that all correct, or it could be dangerous. But where there's more leeway with, like, black powder and Pyrodex when you're loading shotgun shells. So that's something else. Hey, Mr. Bumblehill, how you doing? Oh yeah, muzzle loaders were. I remember the basic, like a basic CVA Hawkins, which was a quality rifle back in the day. You could get those for less than $200, and now I'm sure they're probably $500 or more, because they got the brass and stuff on them. But we had a special muzzle loading season here in Michigan, but now they've just kind of opened those seasons up. You could still use a muzzle loader. I think they still call it muzzle loading season, but you can use any firearm during the muzzle loading season, so it kind of takes away from it. Back in the day, muzzle loading was in December, and that's when you got the old smoke pole out. You did that, but it's kind of all went by the wayside now. But yeah, yeah, the good old days. But things are always changing. Chicken crap black powder recipe online. I guess I didn't know that. I have read how you can make your own black powder, but I guess I've never tried any of that. That may be going a little too deep. I don't need to know quite that much, but you never know. Maybe it would come in handy in the right circumstances, like Robinson Crusoe type stuff. Well, guys, it's been about an hour here. I really enjoyed chatting with you guys again, as always. I thank everybody for the super chats and stuff. I just enjoy talking with you guys, and getting like-minded people together to discuss everything that's going on in the world. We all can learn from each other. That is not a duck. That's actually a snow goose right back there. That is a snow goose, and that goose was taken in Missouri about 20 years ago, 21, 22 years ago, and we went to Missouri snow goose hunting, and I don't know if they still call it Squaw Creek anymore, but it's by Squaw Creek National Wildlife Refuge in northwest Missouri. But like I said, I don't know if they still call that Squaw Creek anymore. But that's the general area that was on the Mississippi Flyway there and along the Missouri River, and the snow geese out there are considered a basically a nuisance, so they had a spring season, and we would go down there and shoot them for that spring season, and that. I got that mounted, and I actually got a pheasant up above me here mounted, and then I got a turkey tail over there, and then I got deer antlers up there in the floor joists. But yeah, so that's a little quick tour there. But yeah, I appreciate all you guys out there. I hope you guys always get something out of my videos, and it's always good to sit down in the evening and chat with you guys. But anyway, some Modern Refugee. I will be back with another live stream on this weekend. I'm not sure which day I'm going to do it yet, but I will post a few hours ahead of time so you guys know that. But it will be coming up this weekend. But anyway, appreciate each and every one of you guys for taking some time out of your day to spend it here with us. And you guys have a good one.